This is going to be an Adulting 101 podcast. Everything that Erin and I wish we learned in high school. The words interest and down payment and mortgage. Had no idea what anybody was talking about and I'd want to cry.
I got denied to get a credit card.
Most people use credit cards and just keep racking up debt.
For an additional $500, we can get a house.
You can really put a small amount of money into renovations and it can bring up the value of your house a ton. We officially sold our house.
Yeah, we did.
Hey babes.
What's up?
It's Haley.
And Erin.
And welcome back to the Hey Babes podcast.
Yes, we have a very interesting podcast topic today.
Yeah, we are literally going to cover everything that Erin and I wish we learned in high school. This is going to be an Adulting 101 podcast. We're going to talk about everything that, like I said, you wish you knew. Everything from credit cards, credit history, mortgages, loans, approvals, buying a house, selling a house.
Yeah, and all these things we've learned throughout the years, and some of these things we literally learned 2 days ago.
Exactly.
So we're very, very new to it. We're going to be the older brother and sister that, you guys wish you had, or that mentor to give you all this advice that we wish we knew.
And hopefully you can learn from some of our mistakes.
Exactly. So you don't do the same things that we did these last few months.
We're so excited to kick off this podcast, and we have so much to say, so we're just going to get right into it. I think that the first thing I want to talk about is something that's relatable to kind of everybody, because not everyone is at a stage where they can buy a house, but something that most of you guys probably are using or have some experience with is credit cards.
Yes.
And it's so funny. This is probably going to end up sounding like a sponsorship, but I'm telling you guys, this is really just information that we wish we knew.
Yeah.
And first of all, starting off with a credit card, I remember that the advice my big sister gave to me, she's like, on your 18th birthday, I am taking you to the bank and we are opening up your credit card. I was like, okay, what's the rush? I didn't really understand it. She said, you want to start building your credit history as soon as possible. So what does that really mean?
Yeah, basically same idea. And she did hers in Canada. I did mine in the United States. And same idea. I turned 18. I went to Wells Fargo, which is a bank here in the States. I opened up my first credit card and then I used it. And they approved me depending on if I had any income or anything like that. Because sometimes some banks won't approve you.
Yeah.
At the time, because I was working for the a Jewish community center or whatever.
You had
as a
some kind of
counselor,
income.
I had some sort of income and they saw that money was coming in. So they approved me. And I think my credit limit was $1,000 or $800.
So let's just say, even if you are somebody who does not have a job or something, there's a lot of banks that can offer you a very low risk credit card. Yeah. So let me explain to you what a credit card is. I'm literally going to go quickly through the basics. It's basically a card that you have a limit on, that you're allowed to spend money that you technically don't have. It's money that you're borrowing. Mm-hmm. And if you pay that money back in time before the month is over, the statement is over, then you don't have to pay interest on it.
Yes.
So what does interest mean?
Interest is the money you get, is the amount that is charged if you don't pay the balance after it is due. For example, let's say you buy something for $100 on your credit card. They give you a certain duration of time to pay off that. Mm-hmm. Or they'll tell you you have a minimum payment of, let's say, $10 or $20.
But you're still going to be charged interest on it.
So you can pay the minimum payment and not pay the full $100. But what's going to happen is certain credit cards charge between a 15 to 29% APR, which I'm assuming is the interest rate, and they'll charge you that amount of interest on top of what you owe.
So let's say that you borrow $100 and you swipe your credit card for something that's $100. If you don't pay off that $100, let's say the interest is...
usually you have to pay the minimum.
Yes.
As long as you pay the minimum, it won't affect your credit score.
Yes.
If you don't pay the minimum at all, then it affects your credit score because you're not paying the loan off. Mm-hmm. But when you do pay it, but you don't pay it in full, you're going to be charged interest. So then you're going to have to owe even more money.
Exactly. So how do banks make money? They pretty much make money if you don't pay your credit card on time. They make money off of that percentage that you haven't had. So you're borrowing their money, and by borrowing their money, they're making money. And it's the same situation with a loan, just on a much bigger scale for a mortgage, for example.
Yes.
So why is it really, really important to build a good credit score? Erin brought up. With a credit score, it's really going forward in your life, the way that people can view how much they can trust you in terms of your spending habits. So the way that I was always taught to treat a credit card is treat it like a debit card. You really only use money that you have in your account. So for example, if I was to go to the movies, I want to pay $25 for a ticket, I would only swipe my credit card on it, knowing that I already have $25 in my bank to pay it off.
Yes.
I had no idea, babe, that most people use credit cards and just keep racking up debt.
I know.
More and more.
I've had clients that I knew people that were $10,000-$15,000 in credit card debt.
And I was,
And I
wow.
would tell him, like, what? First, I was like, what are you doing here? Why are you coming as for personal training if you're telling me you owe like $15,000-$20,000 in credit card debt? And they're like, well, I wanted to go on vacation, so I paid here. And then I did this and I did that. And then the credit card offered me to increase my limit. And then because of the increase in their limit, they thought they can spend more money.
It just really seems like this magical card that you never have to pay anything back,
Exactly.
which can be so problematic.
Yeah,
That's
of
why it's
course.
really good to reiterate this rule. Obviously, it's a privilege to be able to pay off your
sure.
bills, but if you can, always try to use a credit card consciously, knowing that I already have the money in my bank to pay off my credit card bill this month. That's why I know it's worth it to do the credit card, because then you build your credit score if you use your credit card. And on top of that, some cards also offer like points,
points and stuff like that.
cashback, stuff
And
like
if
that.
you're the type of person that you are not reliable with a card, like you know yourself, you know you're going to be spending a bunch of money and your credit card bill is always like very, very high end of the month.
Let me guess. Don't increase your limit.
Don't increase the limit. Don't use your credit card.
Yeah.
Like put certain things on there, like very small subscriptions, like Netflix. I don't know what you guys want to add there. Cell phone bill. Everything else, you can use your debit card, because if you're the type of person, you're just going to spend money eating out and doing all this stuff. But then when it comes to pay the bill, you don't have enough to pay it off. You're just not at a point where you're, I guess, responsible enough to be doing that.
And just so you know, that actually really builds your credit history very well. Sometimes, like we said, you set it and forget it. You can send like 1-2 subscriptions to your credit card history.
Some
put it
credit
on
cards.
authorized payments.
Exactly.
and
Credit cards
you
have
don't
that.
to
You can
think
just
about it.
authorize payment and just pays it off for you.
And it
then
builds
you're
your
good.
credit. And that's what I did for the first few years of my life. I just put my phone bill on there, I remember. And then after a couple of years, my credit history was really good. I have a very high credit limit right now, which is awesome.
So a few tips in terms of having a credit card and all this stuff. Number one rule, which I did a mistake, which I did not know, but there was literally a lot
Our
of reasons.
mistake now, because it's affecting me
yeah.
as well.
Is that you never ever want to close the first credit card you've ever opened. And what happened to me is that when I was 18, I applied for a credit card, which I had for many, many years. And then I moved to Canada like a year later, but I would use that credit card here and there. When I opened up a credit card in Canada, I did it with the intention I was never going to move back to America, or I don't need the credit in America, who cares? So literally 6 months before we moved back to America, before we made the decision, I closed the credit card completely. So those 7 years
Shame.
of history that I had
Gone.
when I went to go apply for a credit card back in here, and here, because we had TD Bank in Canada, they had this program that you can get a cross-border credit card. Yeah. So basically, as they'll pull your credit from Canada, and based on that, they'll approve you for a credit card here in America. So you don't have to start fresh.
Which is nice.
Which was very good for both of us. So when I originally applied for a credit card when we moved back to Florida a little over a year ago, I got denied to get a credit card. And I'm like, how do I get denied? They're like, oh, you have no history. I'm like, I do have history, 7 years. Like, yeah, but it seems that you closed it. And because of that, you're starting from zero. So we can't approve you for a credit card.
And what's the problem with starting from zero? Again, whenever you want to go and you want to either get a lease for a car or you want to get a lease on a property, people don't know what kind of spending habits you have because you have no credit score.
Exactly. You can be making, I know people that they make a lot of money. They'll be making like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they've never taken a loan. Their house, they bought in cash. The cars they bought out, they never lease it. And then the credit look at them like, you have no history. Like, yeah, you might have all this money, but we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what's happening. Exactly. So these guys might have to lease a car, even though they can afford to buy the car flat out. They just buy it to just show some history so they can get approved for a mortgage or something in the near future.
Exactly.
So that's what happened to me. I had to end up going to TD Bank, get my credit from Canada to get pulled, and then I got approval for a credit card there.
So now, quickly going off of that, I was actually able to pull my credit from Canada with TD. So that was really nice. It sounds like a TD sponsorship, honestly, but it's a really great concept because here I was able to get approved for a personal credit card with a good limit because I had that history. But when it comes to like opening a business at any other bank, like Chase or whatever, again, I'm personally starting from zero.
Yeah.
So it's really, really hard. And it's definitely something that you have to consider, especially if you're someone who's looking to like move to a different country. Like you have to figure these things out. But I also want to explain to you guys how important it was when buying a house. So with buying a house, there's many different steps. We really want to break this down in a very, very simple way because like you guys said, a lot of you have no idea how to go about it. Like who explained to you even how to buy a house?
We had your sister explain to us.
Thank
and
God.
There was a lot of things that we didn't know, like going into it, like what it was. We thought originally, like, okay, like we have money saved.
Let's say a house is $1 million, just to make the math very simple.
Yeah.
Let's say a house is $1 million.
A house is $1 million. We thought, okay, how much do we need? 20% down ideally is what you would need for a house in Canada.
What does a
if
down
it's
payment?
over $1 million?
Yeah, what does a down payment mean? Let me quickly explain. A down payment is pretty much you're putting a percentage of the house, of the value of the house, down cash. So, for example, if you are going to do 20% on
When
a
we say
million,
cash, we don't mean actually cash, like
No, we
mafia
just mean-
style. You bring a luggage and not cash. Meaning like you have the money in your account ready to go.
So let's just say if you buy a house for $1 million and you're going to put 20% down, before you even go and buy the house, you need to have $200,000 ready to put into the house. So we thought as long as you have the 20%, you're set. You can buy a house.
And we
you're
were looking
good.
for a house for like a year, and we're looking, and we're like, okay, we need. And then there was a point where we almost put an offer on a house, and then our real estate agent at that time was like, okay, so do you have the funds for? Well, yeah, we have 20%, and he's like, okay, but you also need this fee for that fee and this thing. So technically, it's like 23%, and I'm like, we didn't know that. Nobody told us that.
Because there is apparently a lot of fees on the back end of it, especially depending where you live. I mean, I spoke to this with one of my friends from Toronto.
Yeah.
And depending on where you live in Canada, for example, Toronto versus we lived in like Upper Toronto, there's like different percentage taxes that you have to pay. Even just buying a house, it's like a land transfer tax or something. So sometimes when you think that you have enough like to go in 20%, you got to think of it really like 22, 23%.
Because you also have lawyer fees, exactly.
And you have those land transfer tax fees. And like, we don't want to scare anybody off. I'm just saying that it's really not that simple. There's a lot more that goes into it. So always just make sure that when you are putting in an offer on the house, it's not like to the bit, you know, you have exactly
You
what
have
you
to
need.
have some wiggle room, and sometimes
Exactly.
you might need to take a loan to like from a family friend or anything like that to help you out. On top of that, you have to also show income because a mortgage will not approve you if you don't show that much income. At the
Alright.
time, Haley was doing YouTube and I had my personal training business, and for me, I would make a lot of money cash, and we would spend it on like groceries and stuff like that, and I would declare it in the end of the year, but it was very hard to detract as opposed to how Haley was getting paid. She was getting paid directly.
to my banks directly. So I couldn't hide anything.
And so the banks needed to look at that. They're like, the banks want to see somebody with consistency. Even for us, it was very hard for us to get a mortgage in the beginning because they didn't know what we did. They're like, what is this YouTubers? What do you use influencers? Like, we don't.
Because just so you guys know, the way that it works when you want to go buy a house, we actually did it through a mortgage broker where you go to somebody and he pretty much builds a case for you that he takes to the bank and he's like, okay, here's a couple that wants to buy a house. This is why you should give them the loan. And he tries to make you look really good in front of them. That's the whole point.
And they'll ask for bank statements. They'll ask for this because you have two ways of showing income. One, you have 2 years of tax returns that you shows, like
Which is all your previous income.
yeah,
pretty
exactly.
much.
Tax returns that you'll get, and then based on that, they'll see how much income you got and all that stuff.
Or you could show them a projection. A projection
Exactly.
is kind of like
if you have your own business, you do 6 months projection, meaning 6 months I made this. In the next 6 months, I'm gonna make that.
So for example, with me, let's say I had some contracts with sponsorships that I know that the sponsorship is gonna happen like 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line. I would just show them these contracts and I'm like, here's a projection of what I'm gonna be making, even though I don't have it on me right now.
Yeah.
So there's different ways that you guys can build this case. Obviously, the mortgage broker's job is to do this for you, but our difficulty with it was that we only really had one solid year that we were able to show that we were working, paying off things, because the way that we started from the bottom. I was literally going to say that. When Erin and I got married, I know it was a little bit cringe, I'm not going to lie. But when Erin and I got married, we actually lived with my parents in the beginning. We mentioned this before. We lived with them for what, a year and a half?
A year and a half, yeah.
And the reason we did this is because we told ourselves when we got married, we really wanted to do everything on our own, in the sense that we didn't want to really borrow money from my parents. We didn't want to have his parents like pay for our apartment.
We also didn't see the value of like renting an apartment, like a 1 bedroom at a time, or one bedroom plus den
free.
was like 2,400, and then we're like, for an additional like $500 we can get a house.
Exactly.
So why would we spend that money on an apartment? Because it didn't make sense. So
it just didn't make sense. But the Toronto market is also really crazy.
now it's very bad. But before, pre-pandemic, like it was very, very different. Even getting approval for mortgages was very different.
Exactly. So this is kind of like our track of how we started. It's not like one day we got married, woke up, we're like, let's buy a house.
Yeah.
So we were able to save a lot of money by living with my parents, which was definitely helpful. After that, a year and a half later, Eran and I were already like, Eran wanted to open his business like more.
Yeah,
He
I was getting
renting-
overwhelmed
yeah.
with clients, and Haley needed a space for her filming more, and we just, on top of it, we also wanted our own space. Like,
And our own privacy.
yeah,
Mom, Dad, we love you, but we needed
we
the
just
space.
needed, that's every married couple needs that. They can't live with their parents forever. So we had the opportunity that Haley's parents were like, listen, we have another property that you guys can live in. We'll rent it out to you.
Yeah, they didn't do us no favors. They're like, listen, this is the price on the property. If you guys want to rent it from us, no problem. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was great. It gave us a sense of responsibility because we were starting to make those payments.
Yeah.
We were also showing on our accounts that we were already making payments as tenants, which shows that we're reliable. And over time, we were able to save because, again, we were paying off monthly, knowing that we were making a little bit more each month, that we could put it away and
Exactly.
save it. So that's exactly what we were doing. When you actually look down the line, usually it's always better to buy if you have that money for a down payment. Most of the time, the amount that you're paying monthly to return your mortgage is usually less than what you're paying to lease. That's why some people are saying it's always better to buy than to rent if you
Yeah.
have the funds.
Exactly.
So when Eran and I were at a point where we're like, okay, we have enough for a down payment on a house, let's start looking. So once we actually started looking, we tried to find things within our budget. We went to our mortgage broker, and that's kind of where the story continues. His job was to make us look really good in front of the banks.
Yeah.
So we showed them our billing statements, we showed them our history.
We even showed them future contracts that we signed that we
Yeah.
know that in the next few months we'll be getting this amount. And like
Mm-hmm.
at the time, because I only got a credit card in Canada like maybe 3 years into me living there after we got married.
Your
because
credit was not great.
My credit wasn't great because I had no history, but Haley's was. So because of that, because we were married, it balanced out.
So guys, keep that in mind also. Sometimes choosing your spouse, you want to choose somebody with good spending habits. Like,
Yeah.
let me just
also
say
know
that.
what his credit history is. If he has a very bad history, it's going to affect what's going to happen in the future.
You definitely, I'm not saying don't marry someone if he has a bad credit history, but it's definitely something you have to consider working on. Maybe open a new credit card
Yes.
at a new bank and start from fresh.
Or also, there's another quick tip that helped us a lot is that if you have somebody that's very, very good credit, and obviously that you trust and that they are very responsible with their funds and whatever and all that stuff, and they're willing to add you as an authorized user to their credit line, automatically that's going to help boost your credit score because they're going to be paying off their credit card. Let's say they have like a $20,000 credit limit.
But because your name is associated on the card, you're getting
That history. If they're
Exactly.
responsible and they're paying for it, then you're going to be building up, and that's going to help you build your history very, very quickly because the credit scores also depend on how high your limit is. The
Exactly.
higher your limit and the lower your spending will be, and therefore your credit score will go up very, very
So
high.
let me break this down super easily. Like I said, with me, because I'm kind of starting from scratch, it's kind of impossible for me to get a credit card here right now. So Eran got a credit card for himself using the history that he already had from Canada. And he was able to add me as an authorized user on his credit card. So all this time that he's going to be spending is going to only be benefiting me. Obviously, as long as he's making his payments on time and he's paying everything off in full.
If not, she'll whoop me. So I
Yeah,
have no choice
exactly.
really.
But something else that we actually learned, Eran was kind of getting to it to simplify it even further. Let's say your credit limit is $10,000. You always want to try your best to maybe keep it
Under
keep your charges
30%.
under 30%. So
Yeah.
always try to keep your charges per month under $3,000.
Yeah, even lower if possible. Even if it's 5%, it's very good because it's kind of weird. But banks want to see that they can give you a very high spending limit, but they
you're
don't
not
want you to
taking
spend that
advantage of
much.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're like, we're gonna give you this whole bag of chips, but we just want to see if you're gonna eat the whole thing. If you're just gonna eat one or
They're
two.
really testing you.
Yeah,
aren't
they're like, if you eat 3, we like you. If you eat the whole bag, even though we gave you the permission to use it, we don't want you to use everything.
Exactly.
That's how they work.
I mean, there's just so much I wish that we knew in the process, you know?
If I would have had so the reason why it was very important is because this year we applied for a lease on a car, and it was a whole big thing because I had a good credit score, but they said you don't have enough history. You only have a credit card age of like less than a year. And it was a very big thing that they gave me the car, even though we signed it and they were threatening to take it back. It was a big mess. So long story short, I had to get a co-signer, which was my father, to sign on the lease, and they gave me the car on the spot once my dad
so daddy
signed.
bailed you out.
I had no choice, or that, or I go somewhere else. And they're very, very tricky with this type of thing. So because my dad had a very long history, like 30 plus years of credit, he had a very, very high credit
So
score.
he's very trustworthy.
He's very trustworthy. They gave him the approval on the spot. So It's also, if you have a chance that when you get a lease on a car or anything like that, you don't get approved for the lease, or they give you very, very high rate, I'm gonna enunciate it better, which is what they were gonna do to me. They gave me a certain price, and then they're like, oh, listen, you don't have enough history, even though your credit score is very good, we're gonna have to charge you even more. But because I got a co-signer, they were able to keep it at the same rate that we originally signed. And if I really wanted, I could have went to another dealership and got an even better deal. But now I know for now.
Exactly.
So credit score is very, very important. Credit history is very, very important. And if you have somebody that can co-sign for you or add you as an authorized user as kind of like a help you out, it's very good. Last and final tip, when you are leasing a car and they do approve you, even if the person is the first person to lease and you're the second, it still builds up your credit history because then both of your names are on it.
So even if the cosigner is like the main person on the lease and you're the secondary person,
it builds it up.
It builds it.
So if you're leasing a car for the first time, you're 18, 19, or even 16 or whatever, and your parents...
Don't feel like getting your parents to like lease it is going to harm you.
Yeah.
It won't. It'll only help you.
Yeah, it'll help you build it. And I know a few parents that they even get their kids... Bless you. If you guys don't hear, Naomi's literally right here, and I'm tapping
just
her
so
with my feet.
I'm like peeking at her.
Yeah, I know.
Under.
If you guys see us like looking down, we're just looking at Naomi because...
And she's like staring at you like she's mesmerized. She's
I
like,
know.
Dad is so knowledgeable.
She just wants to hear our voice. Because when we put her over there or over here, she gets very whiny. But if
she's
chill.
chill. I'm proud of her.
Oh, she just wants to... She's always smiling.
Yeah.
So, long story short, if you have anybody to kind of help you out in that sense, it's very, very beneficial. And like I said, there are a few people that I know that when their kids turn 15, 16, they add them as an authorized user to already build up their credit.
And it's very good.
By the time they're 18, 19, they already have a crazy amount of history. So when they ask for a loan, when they apply for a lease on a car, in the future, when they try to get a mortgage, they'll get approved very, very easily. And they have a very, very big credit history to work with.
And we're for sure going to do that for our kids. So you guys, if you are parents and you didn't already know this, if you have kids who are kind of creeping up to the age where they're almost teenagers, you can just put them as an authorized user. You don't even need to tell them.
Yeah, don't even give them a credit card.
Yeah, just put them on because it only helps build them.
Yeah.
And I feel like with the market and the real estate market and how much you really need to prove yourself that you can pay things off, everything you can do to help your kids, even if it's not giving money, but helping their reputation helping their reputation of their finances is so important and it is so good. Yeah. And it will really give them the confidence going forward that they're not starting from zero.
Exactly. Also keep in mind, guys, the reason why Haley didn't get a credit card here when we first moved because she didn't have a social insurance number. Technically, where you live, for example, in Canada, I couldn't get one when I was there as a student because I didn't have one until I got married. So keep in mind, the reason why Haley wasn't able to get one after all this time was because she didn't have status here 100% yet. Once she got her employment card and she had a SIN number, she was able to apply for a credit card. So technically, building up the credit will only work if you have a social insurance number in where you live.
Pretty much saying, be legal where you are.
Yeah, if you don't have papers or you're here illegally, obviously you can't build up your credit.
That's all we're saying.
So you'll have a debit card, but that's it.
But do it that way you will.
Exactly.
You know? Okay. Moving on, I actually really want to get more into the details of buying a house and kind of the process and the definitions of things that I just felt like people would say on the words interest and down payment and mortgage, and it would stress me
Transfer fees and this and that, and
I had no idea what anybody was talking about, and I'd want to cry because it was just so overwhelming.
Closing day and
comment down below
inspection.
If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, comment down below if you also felt this like overwhelming sense the first time you heard all these words, or if you still feel like you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to help you get through it, okay? So let's do this together. I have this literally on my phone just to make sure that we are getting through it properly. In my own words, what is a mortgage? A mortgage is a loan that you get to buy a house, and the way that they make money is by charging interest on that loan. As we said, what is interest? Interest is pretty much how they are making their money on giving you that loan. So because you don't have, let's say you want to buy a house for $1 million, because you don't have $1 million, they're going to be giving you $800,000, let's say, and you're going to put the $200,000 down. But while you pay back that $800,000, you're going to be paying a little bit of a fee on top of that every month. And that's how the bank kind of, ends up being happy. They make their money
because
that way.
there's always a catch. They're not gonna say, "Yeah, we'll just lend you $800,000,"
but you don't have
because
to
we're
pay us
nice.
anything.
They're gonna say, "We're gonna lend you $800,000, but there has to be something in it for us."
Exactly. So, calming down. What is a down payment again? A down payment is pretty much just setting the base that you have a certain amount of money that you could already put into the house. Something I didn't know, which was really great. Which, by the way, babe, I don't even think we announced to them that we officially sold our house.
Yeah, we did.
Now. we can officially explain to you guys the process of selling as
Yeah.
well, because oh my goodness,
Yeah, it was
it was a lot.
very
But I'll tell you guys
overwhelming.
something. When we bought the house, let's just say our house was $1 million. We're just gonna throw it as a simple
As an
amount,
example,
as a
yes.
simple amount down there. Let's just say our house was $1 million and we put down 20%. Usually back then you were able to choose how much percent down payment you were able to put down. When my parents bought a house, babe, they only had to put down 5%,
Yeah.
which was nothing. That means that you can literally have, like, let's say 50,000.
Yeah, and you'll be able to put in, and it would be fine.
Exactly. So now the more down payment you put, the more likely that you're going to be approved for a loan. So we ended up putting down 20%. Let's say our house was $1 million. We put $200,000. I thought that I would never see this $200,000 again. I thought that it was just going to the house and that's it. I'm so happy to say that now that we sold our house and we sold it at a little bit of a profit,
Yeah.
I got that money back.
Yeah, because whatever, it makes sense. The money that you put in, and then plus over time it grows, you get that money back.
So to buy the property, literally the bank takes that amount. Let's say you bought the house for $1 million. They're paying it and they bought the house for you. So now the bank technically
Owns the house. So
and
if
you're
God
paying the bank.
forbid you don't pay your mortgage, or God forbid people lose their jobs and they cannot afford it anymore or
They
anything
take
like
your
that,
house away.
in return they take your house and then they do like foreclosure, and then they end up selling the house for much cheaper because they
Most
just
of the time, yeah.
yeah, because they're not going to be taking care of a $800,000 house or whatever, so they're going to put it for very, very cheap, and some people swoop in, buy the property, and they made
Which is a really good tip for selling.
Yeah.
We'll get into the selling. Let's stay on to the buying for now.
Yes.
So with that, Ellen and I just felt so overwhelmed in the beginning because we're like, okay, we have all these fees, whatever. We were able to negotiate a certain interest rate, which was really great. I want to explain to you guys why we decided to sell our house. We kind of touched on it a little bit before.
Yeah.
But basically, when you buy a house and you talk to the bank about what you want to do, most of the time, I don't know if it works like that here, but in Canada, you have kind of two options on how you want to go with the interest. You either close on a fixed rate or you close on a variable rate. A fixed rate pretty much means that, let's say the bank wants 2% of your monthly expense. That means 2% of the house, they're going to be adding that into the loan every single month, and you're going to be adding it.
Yeah, and no matter how the market is in the country,
You're always
your
gonna
rate
be
is going to be that
2%.
percent, by depending on how many years you sign for. You can sign it for 1 year, you can sign it for 5 years. Apparently in the States, you can sign it for
Ever.
all years, 30 years, which I've never heard of that in Canada.
That is the best thing ever.
Yeah, here you sign, you get this rate, boom, that's it. You don't need to worry about up and down and all
So
that
what is
stuff.
the goal? You always want to sign for the lowest possible interest rate, because you have the principal and you have the interest. This was always messing me up, and I'm going to try to explain this very easily. The principal is how much you're paying for the actual price of the house. The interest is how much you have to pay plus what you have to pay the bank.
Yeah.
So with the principal rate, you want to be paying monthly that rate off the most, because when you're paying off whatever you owe for the house, that's the best.
Yeah, because then at some point when you sell the house
You're gonna
or
get
you
that money
take out
back.
equity, you're gonna be getting that money back. And like, if you can pay off your mortgage, and let's say like your sister paid off her mortgage in like 10 years or
Exactly,
something.
which is amazing.
When she sold her house and it went up by a lot in the last 10
All
years,
of that went into her pocket.
all the money went into her pocket, and she was able to buy an even bigger house and still have some left,
which is amazing.
to work with. So
Think about it this way. If I give Eran $100, instead of him just paying $150 back, his priority is to pay my $100 back. That's his priority. And that's what you want to kind of think about. That's why you want the interest rate to be as low and as small as possible, so that your priority is to pay back what you initially took.
Yes.
Not on top of that. So what was difficult with us?
So the thing is that during the pandemic, which is when we bought the house, the interest rates were at an all-time low. It was like 1.89,
Which is
was
good for buyers.
very good for a buyer. So if you were able to close on that for a very long time, you're saying here like you're paying grushim, you're paying pennies on interest, which the
Exactly.
whole point is you're trying to get the principal to be higher than the interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause at some point, we're paying more interest than the actual house. So the next year when we would check
That's
how much
not
we
money
paid,
you're getting back.
yeah, you're just paying on interest, and then we would circle around the year and be like, how much of the house do we actually pay off this year?
$2,000.
$2,000? But we freaking paid like so much money per month, like over $4,000 a month. How is that possible?
Yeah.
And then half of it went to interest, or more went to interest.
Yeah.
And so the whole goal is that ideally what happened was there's, I guess, a A side and there's a B side. A side is the best interest rate. These are the people that are nurses, that they're doctors, they're all this stuff. they have very, very reliable jobs. They've been nurses for a few years, or they're, I don't know, contractor, or they're architect, or somebody, or they're a business owner, and they've been in business for many, many years, so that they show that they have a very reliable source of income. Our end was that we went from making a certain amount of money, and then thank God it just boomed 1 year. Like, I just blew up with my personal training. She, thank God, blew up with her YouTube, so we were making a very good amount of income in that 1 year.
But in a very short amount of time.
Exactly. So they were just like, yo, where is this money coming from? On top of that, they're like, okay, we know what personal trainer is. What is a YouTuber? Well, what is a content creator? We have no idea. And it got to the point that when we applied for a mortgage, they kept having to go up the ladder of the bank because the people didn't know what it was.
They didn't know what category to put
They didn't know
under.
what to category up until this is how you know this is all in God's hand, that when it reached the highest level, I guess of
The bank,
of the
mortgage
bank,
people.
I guess of the like I guess like the CEO of that bank or the highest level or the manager of the bank, she was like, "Oh, I know Haley's corner.
My kids
kids watch her. Give him the loan." And it just goes to show like how much is in God's hands because we didn't know how to categorize us. So what happened was we got a first year rate fixed, and we were more of towards the A B side. I want to say, so we're towards the middle. And we got a 2.99 interest rate
Which
for
is
first-time home buyer.
relatively good.
Relatively good. And our mortgage broker was okay. We're gonna sign a 1 year fix, and hopefully next year we'll get you more to the A side. You'll show a bit more income this year because we only have 1 year's worth
A
of income.
side pretty much means it's easier to get a loan. It's easier to get a smaller interest rate. B side means they need a little bit more proof,
And they'll
bit
give
more
you a higher
evidence,
interest
and
rate and
usually it's a
whatever.
higher interest rate. Your goal is to always try to get on the A side.
You
We
can
were kind
also
of in the middle,
you can
trying to get to the A.
exactly. You can also go to a private loan, but they're gonna charge you like 7-8%. That's when they like rip you.
But some people who, let's say, want to go ahead and buy a house and they committed to buy a house with no financial condition, they have no choice but to
Yeah,
go to somebody like that
exactly.
because they committed to buy the house already.
Because sometimes what happens is that people want to buy a house very badly, and they come in there and they say we want to buy the house with no conditions, meaning we're signing for this house, and it's up to us whether we pay for it or not. We have to sign up for it. So whether we're gonna get approved for a mortgage or not, it's on us now. Sometimes you sign, you say, oh, we're doing with an inspection condition or a financial condition, meaning
Yeah,
if
if
we
you
get
guys didn't
approved.
know that, by the way, I did want to mention, like reiterate it. When you go to buy a house, usually the way that it works is that you call up your real estate agent. Your real estate agent comes to show you a property. If you love that property and you want to put in an offer, you have an option of, like Eran said, putting in an offer with no conditions. That means if they accept your offer, you are obligated, because you signed a contract, you are obligated to purchase that house. You cannot back out of it. If you do back out of it, there's usually the deposit that you put on the house, they keep it.
Yeah.
So,
Also, when you make the offer, you gotta put a down payment as well.
yeah, you have to put a deposit. Most people
Deposit.
don't know
It
that.
depends on how much. Usually they say I think 5%.
It depends. Yeah.
3%, whatever, but you have to put like a
Straight
good
up.
deposit. So when we're selling our house, we're having multiple offers, and there was one couple that came, and off the bat, they gave us the highest price, no conditions, no finance. They're like, we want, and after
we
like
knew that as soon as we signed, we can chill.
That's
we can
it, we're
relax,
like,
it's done. If they do decide to back out of it, we at least pocketed like a good amount of money. From
yeah,
their
we keep the
deposit.
down payment, but either way, they couldn't back out of it pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, you know what I mean? Because they signed it with no conditions, meaning that once they signed for the house is there.
So
How they come up with the money is up to them.
So some advice I want to give you in regards to that before we get back to our last point. If you are somebody who wants to go and buy a house and you're very excited, no problem. You can go ahead and put in an offer with no conditions. It will actually give you a very strong position as buyers, because usually someone who sells their house wants somebody with no conditions because they want a sure thing. The problem is with that is that don't commit to it if you genuinely can't handle it. If you find something in the house that's a problem, just keep in mind you cannot back out of it at that point.
Yeah.
If you are somebody who is very certain that your financial status is good, you can go in. But if you don't know what the condition of the house is like sometimes the pipes are really bad, sometimes there's mold, sometimes there's a lot of other issues with it that you may not have seen.
Yeah.
You go in and you ask for an inspection condition,
Yes.
which means that you are buying this house under the condition that the inspection passes and everything is fine. Because that's always like a little loophole that
Yeah,
you can
you
get
can
out
always
of it.
back out. Oh, this wasn't as good. The floors is cracked. I don't like it.
And at that point, you can back out of it, and they return the deposit to you because you had an inspection condition.
Exactly.
So,
And at the end of the day, you also have to keep in mind how old the house is. Like at the time when we bought our house, it was less than 10 years old. So we know that it was relatively new for the house
we decided
market.
to put in a risk, and we did do the finance
We-
condition, but we
fine.
didn't do an inspection condition.
Oh yeah, we didn't do inspection condition, and we didn't do inspection in general.
Because it was a 10-year-old
It was a relatively
house.
new house.
Yeah.
It was they were the people that sold it to us. They were the first owners of it, so it didn't go through anybody else. And yeah, so sometimes sometimes you might even get a pre-approved for a mortgage, but it doesn't mean anything up until you actually get a mortgage, because you'll get pre-approved, but then when you actually apply, the mortgage denies you.
Exactly.
Or they'll approve you, but just charge you a super high interest rate, and then you'll come to the realization that you can't afford.
So keep that in
paying
mind
that.
also. When you are getting a pre-approval, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. So again, having a finance condition, I think it's usually worth the risk
Yes.
of possibly them passing your offer, because you want to keep your funds safe. You want to keep yourself safe,
Yes.
you know?
So then going back to what happened with us in our situation, we got approved. We signed for a 2.99 interest rate for 1 year. After a year later, we were able to sign for a 2.79 for another year. And then our
So a
mortgage
little bit
broker-
lower, which is a good thing.
Which is good. So basically, I guess once we moved here, we had tenants to take over the house, and they were paying per month for the house, basically covering the mortgage, and we're breaking even.
Yeah.
And every year when you buy a house, especially where we bought it in Toronto, the area that we bought it, every year it's going up in value.
So
which
by
is very
being
good.
able to buy a property and put in tenants, they are covering your mortgage payments all the time. So the house goes up in value, but you yourself are not actually paying anything on the house.
Exactly.
So sometimes people even say, if you're a young couple and you are actually able to buy a property, but you feel like you don't necessarily need to live in that property right now, you can go ahead and buy that house, which I know, again, is a privilege. Not everyone is there. But you can go ahead and buy that house or buy a condo or buy something. You can rent for a smaller amount with your spouse or with your partner for a couple of years. And then by the time you're ready to move into the house, you've pocketed a good amount of money, or at least paid off some of that house already.
Yeah.
So I really hope we're not getting ahead of ourselves explaining this, but these are all things that I just wish I would have considered, you know, because not that Eran and I had a buttload of money to sit on,
I
but
know.
it's nice to know now, going forward, all the decisions we make, we don't just make a decision on what is good for us right now. We're always like, what kind of value is this property going to bring us 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Yeah.
That really helps you determine what is the value of the property, how much did you put in renovations, all these things as well. And sometimes don't be scared. I always say, don't be scared to buy a house at a little bit of a lower price if the house is not in the best condition, because you can really put a small amount of money, if you have it, into renovations, and it can bring up the value of your house a ton, which is what
100%.
our situation was. We bought a house, and like we said, the owners that lived there were the first owners, so there was nothing done in the house. Everything was like standard builder, old floors, dingy kitchen, like literally not cute. If you guys want to see the whole renovation series, it's up on my YouTube channel. Just type in Haley's Corner Renos. But I'm telling you, we put in, I can honestly say, we put in $50,000 into renovations. That included getting the entire kitchen gutted, doing a whole new IKEA kitchen.
Also, the basement
Finishing the
wasn't
entire
finished. We did the whole
basement,
basement.
painting the entire house, adding some pot lights, and getting rid of that popcorn ceiling. These are all some things that we added into the house. Doing that upped the value of our house when we went to sell by $200,000.
Yeah. Very significant.
So you put in $50K, but you were able to sell it for an extra $200K. So really, you made $150K off of the fact that you just renovated.
Yeah,
you
thank
know?
God. So we did that. We signed for a 2.79 rate. So what we should have done was sign for 5 years for that 2.79 rate.
And locked it in.
Exactly, and locked it in. And then we would have had that would have been our mortgage payment, and we would have known for 5 years that's how much we have to pay per month on the house.
And it wouldn't change.
And it wouldn't change. And even at some point, we would be able to increase the rent price, that we would even be making a profit on the house. We didn't do that.
And what ended up happening?
The mark in it, even Aliyah, Naomi's crying. She's like, yeah, why you guys
terrible.
didn't do that? It was terrible. So what ended up happening is that we didn't sign. Everything in the market in the United States and in Canada and everywhere else went up. Our rate for the new year went from 2.79 to 6.99%.
More than double.
So basically, no matter how much we would have increased the price for our tenants,
We had to
It
pay
wouldn't have worked.
over $2,000 extra on top of what the tenant was paying us.
Yeah.
So basically, we just ended up realizing that it would just cost us so much to sustain this house. But something everybody always says, if you can afford to buy a property and hold on to it as long as you can,
yeah.
ultimately you're going to make money off of it. So if we would have kept this, if we could have been able to afford to keep it for 10 years, we probably
Yeah.
would have made double in 10 years.
And then what you could have done is that with the money that you made plus on the house, you could have taken out equity. So our goal was that we're going to keep this house for as long as we can. And then when the time is right that we'll buy here, we'll take out equity. Equity is basically how much the house value of the house went up, and you're able to take that as a loan for yourself.
So if you know that a house you bought for 1 million and now is worth 1.5 million, that extra 0.5 million you can take out and put into something else. Even though you technically don't have it, it's kind of like money that floats in the air.
But they
because
still
you know
charge
it's
you
there.
interest on that.
But still.
You're able to get on a lower rate, I'm assuming, because that's technically yours, unless you sell the house.
Yeah.
Which people usually do that. They'll just sell their house and then make that 500,000,
and then take that profit and buy something
else. So in our head, because our house is worth in Canadian, it didn't do us justice to take out equity, because the amount of equity that we would need, it would take 5-10 years to build up, and we didn't have that patience to wait 5-10 years to buy a house in America.
So we just did the math. We're like, are we going to be making some kind of a profit by selling our house right now? If we weren't, we would obviously like try to do everything we can to sustain it.
So we spoke to a few people. We spoke to a rabbi who's very, very knowledgeable in this space, and he told us, listen, my suggestion is sell the house immediately. When the time is right to buy it here, you'll swoop in and buy it. You'll have the funds for it. That's exactly what we did, and it gave us such peace of mind. Now that we sold it, like a whole weight was lifted off our shoulders, because people are telling us, keep it, don't keep it, take a loan to pay it off for the year, and then the next year you'll get a lower rate.
I feel like a part of me just kind of wanted to, I don't want to say this in a harsh way, but like cut the ties that we had in Canada, in the sense of like not having to financially owe anything there.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I
too
mean?
much to have things there and here, and like
currencies are different.
You're paying for rent here, and we have so many expenses as it is, and now we have another thing to worry about there. It's really, very, very complicated. At the end of the day,
if there's anything you guys can take away from this podcast, number one important thing is peace of mind.
Yes.
The reason that we're telling you all of this in advance is that so that before you go into this whole hurdle of finances and like what to do with your money and how to grow your family, like try to take all the steps that you can make so that the process is smooth. Because we broke a sweat so many times with trying to get a mortgage, trying to get a lease on a car. It was a lot. So let me just say this, you guys. If you have any other questions, let me know down below. But I feel like we covered a good amount of like the basics. And something we also wanted to let you guys know is that we are not experts. This is everything that we have learned along the way.
We might be even wrong on a few things.
Definitely. We may have used some words wrong. People make mistakes, but take everything we say with a grain of salt. And if you want, take it back to your parents. Ask them, I heard this. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, ask them, like, how do I build credit? Like, how do I get a mortgage? Anybody that you know that is in that category, like, it helps a lot. It also helps a lot with business, too, because this is obviously not a topic we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about it in our next podcast.
Next one.
Next podcast, because we're going to be announcing our new business.
So we're going to talk all about how we built our business.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the transition from transferring everything from Canada to here, opening up corporations here, what it requires, getting business cards and lawyer and accountant.
More
a
things
bunch of
that
things.
make us sweat, pretty much.
Yes, but that's the whole thing of being journey of an adult. And the best thing that I can tell you is you will learn as you go. Mm-hmm. Don't be scared about all these things. Don't be overwhelmed. If you have somebody that you can ask for advice, take it, go.
And I'll tell you, especially parents, older siblings, friends, sometimes people think that this is common sense stuff, so they don't share this knowledge. But if you really truly have questions, just ask. Like, it does not hurt to ask. Something you learn from every single person will help you, because that's what I did. I have older sisters, and my entire life I've been always trying to learn from their mistakes so that I can go on a more smoother path. We still make a ton of mistakes, but it's definitely nice to have other people's experiences in mind all the time. So
in the end of the day, like, don't be scared, and before you make any decisions, try to get some advice from people who are very experienced in that field. But at the same time, if you feel it in your gut to take that risk, because even when we bought the house, we were like, should we do it, should we not, are we ready, whatever, and we're like, listen, like, God is on our side, we have the funds for it, we can make it. Like, you got to just take the leap of faith. And thank God it worked, and we sold it, and now we know that next time we buy a property, we know what to look for, how to do it, what to do it. I won't sign 1 year rate if the rate is good, because when we told everybody what happens, they're like, you idiot, why didn't you sign for 2.79 rate for 5 years?
We should have said, if you would have given us the advice.
We would have known, but we didn't know. But long
Everything
story
happens
short,
for a reason.
exactly. Everything happens for
We are in
good.
a good place right now,
Yes.
and I'm very, very excited that we get to share this experience with you guys. And again, comment down below if you guys have any questions. If you guys are listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to rate this 5 stars if you guys enjoyed it.
Like, subscribe.
Exactly.
We're so close to 1,000.
We're so close, and we've been saying it for a while,
know.
but we are really, really enjoying all of these conversations because we really wanted to fill the space of being useful in things that, like we said, we wish that we heard when we were younger.
Yeah. So if you have any questions down below about what we discussed, we'll be more than happy to answer. Like I said, we read every comment. If we don't respond right away, it's because we're just very occupied with our lovely daughters. But we see them, and if we can try to respond right away, we will. So usually in the beginning, we respond right away. So if you see this, comment soon. We'll respond soon, and
Don't comment soon. Comment.
You can type in. I'm a big kid now.
Oh, that would actually be really funny. All right. Guys, comment down below. I'm a big kid now.
I'm a big kid now.
Because it literally feels like when you get to this stage of life, it's when you're learning stuff. You're like, oh, wow, I'm getting clarity on all of these things.
But you still feel like a kid. You're
Yeah,
you don't feel like an adult, but you just feel like a big kid. You're
Where's
still
that
learning.
from, by the way?
I'm a big kid. I think it's a Huggies or something, no?
I don't even remember. Comment down
I think
below
it's
that too.
Huggies.
I have
think
no
it's
idea.
diapers.
But guys, thank you so much for watching. We really hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. Naomi's cooing and telling you guys you're the best for being here. We love the ones who stick around all the way till the end. You are our absolute favorite. Comment down below. I'm a big kid now if you are watching this.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share this as well. If you feel like there's people in your life that need to know anything about this topic, feel free to share.
Yeah.
But we love you all, and we can't wait to see you, speak to you, hear you in our next one.
Peace.
Out. Big kids.